Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on our webinar entitled Fundraising Reimagined. My name is Scott Billows, and I'm the founder and CEO of Belmar Consulting. We are a Salesforce partner specializing in working with nonprofit organizations who are on a digital transformation journey. And I'm super excited about this event today. This is really bringing together an incredible speaker, an incredible customer, and an organization that's just been on an amazing journey over the last year and a half. And we're really in for a treat today with our guest. A couple of, I guess, just introductory points that I want to highlight. We are going to, using the Zoom platform, we have the chat feature, and we're going to encourage you to post questions, and if you have any comments for either myself or for Sue throughout the webinar, please post them in the chat, and we will, towards the end, be taking questions, and we'll just be grabbing those through the chat. So please post any questions you have there. For the best viewing experience, I would encourage you to, up in the top right of your Zoom window, access the speaker view. And so if you're not familiar with Zoom, up in the top right corner, there is a button that you can click that will give you some options, and speaker view will bring whoever's speaking into full view. Thirdly, we have a raffle prize that we are going to be providing to 2 participants, but we are going to do a draw at the end of the webinar today. So if you are interested in one of the raffle prizes, you'll need to stick around until the end, and we will announce those right at the end of the webinar. We are going to mute the lines as well. So if you were accidentally to unmute yourself, we just want to ask that you can put yourself back on mute, just for the benefit of all those who are joining. And then lastly, we are recording this webinar today, and we will post it to our YouTube channel following the event. So with that, I want to welcome Sue Griffin, Director of Philanthropy at the Canadian Mental Health Association, Vancouver Fraser. Sue, thanks for joining us today. I'm super excited about this conversation, and I know over the last couple of weeks as we've been preparing for this, your energy is really got me inspired, and I can't wait to have this conversation with you today. Maybe you can start, Sue, by just providing a quick introduction to yourself and your role at CMHA, and talk a little bit about your journey in getting to the Canadian Mental Health Association.
Sure. Thanks so much, Scott, and good morning, everyone. It's been a ride, let me tell you, in terms of how I managed to come to CMHA Vancouver Fraser. I grew up in the world of sports and entertainment, and was very fortunate to have opened a number of stadiums and arenas across Canada, and with the background being really event marketing, sponsorship, event organization. And I was involved with that for a good number of years, and it honestly, it got to the point where I was in my mid-30s, and I was tired of the greed. I was tired of the greed of the owners, of the athletes, of the entertainers, and I thought, how do I take my knowledge and my skill set and use it, where do I align my values? So I drifted very specifically to the nonprofit sector. And when I say drift, because I didn't know what role I wanted to take and what I could actually offer, because I didn't really know anything about the nonprofit sector. Anyway, I started my own business, because you got to, jump off the cliff and just do it. So I started my own business in corporate relations strategy. And for about 10 years, I offered just that strategy in terms of how to develop corporate relationships, how to identify with organizations and align a vision, and really work together long-term strategic relationships. And that's really been the premise of my life and my career. It's all about long-term strategic relationships. And I was working over at the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and the VP offered me a job. I was doing contract work. They offered me a job as manager of major gifts. And I said, I don't even know what that means. And she said, you know what, if you're great with people, you understand relationships, and we're here to support you. So that was my entry into really a career in the nonprofit sector in major gifts. And I've since worked, my gosh, I was working at the province newspaper prior to that in media. As I said, sports and entertainment. I worked in the academic world up at Simon Fraser University, raising funds for varsity athletes. And it was just a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to come here to Canadian Mental Health Association. And really, it was a pivotal turn in my career with where we're at in the world right now, right? There's such a need for increased awareness, increased conversation around mental health. And the longer I'm here and the more donors I speak to, there's such a desire to come together as a community to support all of us in our journey of mental health. And COVID is, the silver lining behind COVID is that it's exposed mental health as a critical component of our lives. And so that's a short version, Scott, in terms of how I got here. In terms of the role here at CMHA Vancouver Fraser, I'm the director of Philanthropy. I oversee marketing, communications, and volunteer management, as well as the fundraising side. Very focused on, again, long-term strategic relationships and identifying how we can generate multiple streams of revenue in order to support our mission. And we have really two different focuses. One is recovery and innovation. That's the clinical side of mental health, where we work with clients in their journey of recovery. And it's mental illness as well as substance abuse here in British Columbia. And we also have a very large department where I spend actually more of my time in fundraising in prevention and intervention. And that focuses on primarily youth, children and youth, and students within, obviously youth, but within the school system.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for that background, that introduction to yourself, and just that journey that you've walked in your career. So really inspiring in terms of your experience prior to nonprofit and just bringing that view into this organization that you're working in today. We have, over the last year and a little bit, worked on a technology project together, and we're going to get into some of the details of that a little later in the conversation. But I'd love to hear from you, because in these conversations that we have with customers, we're wanting to understand and really just share with the community perspectives. And so something that I'd love to hear from you on is just your I guess experience over the last year, and it could even go prior to that, but just how fundraising is evolving and what's happening within the industry in terms of fundraising. So what have you got for us, Sue? In terms of where is it going?
Where's it going and where does it come from? I mean, COVID is certainly, I call it a Pandora's box. It's exposed all the snakes that come up and will bite you on the backside, and it's exposed all the wonderful opportunities as well. So I'm going to go back about 2 years. I come into the organization, and fundraising for us, we've been around for 100 years, so we're not new in the market as a cause or as an organization, but our fundraising here was based on events, because that's what board members find sexy, and let's go out and increase awareness and raise some money through events. So it was very specifically one event that the organization was focused on, and that was 99% of the revenue that came in through this department. I came in January. The event was June, so it was all hands on deck, so to speak, in terms of ensuring that we delivered a first-class event. That was just what we did. But I thought, how do we transition? How do we convert the peer-to-peer component? And the event was a ride. It's called Ride Don't Hide. So we had about 1,000 people. We raised, gross $250,000 net. Anybody in the business knows it doesn't come up to nearly that level. And I said, so how do we capture 1,000 people on site and 2,000 supporters, peers who are raising money, and create a community of donors for mental health? And how do we convert them into ideally monthly donors? And that's been a real struggle, and if anybody's got the answers to that, I would love to know. It's been a real challenge. So transitioning, started looking at other streams of revenue, and our third-party events were going through the moon. We have a program here in Canada called Bell Let's Talk. Bell, massive media telco supplier. And so the conversation's been out there. They've been raising dollars for mental health for the last 10 years. So it's all about let's talk. And I thought, you know what, we need to move from talking to actually doing. And what we were seeing through the third-party events was primarily university college students and younger adults who were committed to the cause. And, whether they did it had a birthday party on Facebook and just said donate to CMHA Vancouver Fraser. So we were seeing a significant increase in our third-party events, which was really exciting because from an ROI standpoint, it's exactly where we wanted to be. We were creating a community. We were communicating with the community about all the impact that they were helping to create. And then COVID hits. Guess what? No more events. Everything's shut right down. So what happened from there? So no more third-party events, no more live events, right? Ride, Don't Hide goes out. So we converted Ride, Don't Hide into virtual, and that's actually been very successful in terms of our gross numbers are certainly not where they were, but our net is certainly increased. So the ROI has been really good on that, and that event is in throughout the month of June. The other revenue stream that increased exponentially because of COVID were grants. And again, people in the fundraising world, it can be your biggest nightmare because the time and energy, writing the grant and then reporting on the grant, and it takes a lot. And so the numbers that we saw at the end of our last fiscal reflected the peaks and valleys of these streams of revenue. And so the challenge has been really to, put the lens on where are we going? And from a fundraising standpoint, where's the community going? Where's the world going? And what does that landscape look like? And we just figured out it's going to be hybrid, right? Digital transformation. We're all on Zoom. We're all connected to whatever platform. And that's going to be a critical and I believe key component to anything that we do from a fundraising standpoint. And whether you like it or not, that's going to be part of it. And I know and I'm assuming your guests here today, Scott, we're all craving to get back in the same room with each other, right? And to be able to just connect and have that body language and which is so critical. I was mentioning to you a couple of weeks ago, I had been invited to a virtual banquet. And the last thing I wanted to do during an evening was, sit in front of another Zoom call and watch this. And it was a fabulous experience. I went in not really excited about it, but what they did was they delivered meals to everybody who had bought a ticket the year before, because we had bought in 2021 or 2020. The event was canceled at last minute, so we were all invited back. We all received meals, the ingredients of the meals the day before, so that we could cook that evening and be able to watch a 1 hour, just a highly produced event. And it was awesome. It was great. And I think there's huge opportunity for those virtual events going forward. The critical component is you need to pay for the production because it has to be a first class production. So you're talking about a different ROI coming back, but you can certainly still engage the donors and you can still provide a platform for corporate partners as well.
Those are some great examples in terms of what your experience has been. And I guess just the follow up to that, Sue, is, and I know you've got some thoughts on this, but I think just even for those who are on this webinar today, just in terms of someone in your role responsible for fundraising, you've come into an organization, there's been, we'll call it, some traditional ways of doing things, and you've looked at these and determined that maybe there's a different way. And certainly COVID is this catalyst that's changed everything. But love to just get your thoughts on how have you sold that internally? How have you sold that to the board? Because these stakeholders, of course, have their view, and what has that strategy been in terms of communicating this internally and getting others on board?
Great question. As fundraisers, we typically have a fundraising committee and we report to the board. For me, the number one priority has been the support of the CEO. I report and always have reported directly to the CEO. And I think as a fundraiser, it's critical that you do, because you walk in tandem with the CEO in terms of raising dollars. And I've I was going to say got older, matured, been around the block a few more times. I'm a little bit more vocal now with the board in terms of their responsibility. So as we look at an annual budget, and whether it's $500,000, $250,000, $10 million that you're responsible for, board members are just as responsible for contributing to the positive outcome financially and relationship wise on that. So what I've done here is developed a fundraising plan, again, showing multiple streams of revenue with a return on investment with each of those streams. And so it becomes part of an education to internally for our finance department, and then internally to the fundraising committee and to the board. So, and that doesn't happen overnight. So as I, build the budget and the strategy, it's the education of why aren't we going to focus all of our time and attention on these events, Sue? And you take a look, if you're doing 50% ROI on it, you're doing well. And then the question is, but it brings so much awareness. Why are we not doing that? And I challenge that by saying, you've got one objective for an event. What is it? Is it an awareness event or is it fundraising? Because if it's an awareness, then I need the $30,000, $50,000 or whatever strictly for awareness. But what are the outcomes of that? If it's fundraising, it's a very different ROI. So to answer your question, I build the budget based on a plan, always having multiple streams of revenue. And by that, I mean major gifts, monthly gifts, your annual giving program, your grants, corporate relations, corporate partnerships, third-party events, in-house events, bequests, and I'm probably missing a couple of others in there. And again, it takes time and it takes internal education. So this year, actually, what we're doing with our board is we have 4 quarterly, I'm calling them pop-up fundraising spots in the board meeting. So it's 15 minutes, and the fundraising chair, who's awesome, she gets it. She's been in fundraising, and that's rare in and of itself. So that's an awesome relationship. So we're doing a 10-minute video, and we've got different topics that we're going to do, and we're going to show it, at our Zoom board meetings, and then open it up for 5 minutes Q&A. And it's all about education. It's all about why it's important to be, as a board member, to be a leader in fundraising. Great example is I was over the BC Sports Hall of Fame, and I was their CEO. And we had a moment in time just following the Olympics where we had a construction issue, blah, 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 blah. And I went to the board and I said, we can renovate this one particular area. It's going to cost us just under $1 million. We've got 10 months to do it. And we can create an Olympic Paralympic gallery. And so put the plan together. They said yes. And then I had to go out and raise those dollars. And we didn't have a really good fundraising plan, but we had some significant donors who've been around for a long time. And I went to, it was an elderly gentleman, and he said, "Yeah, Sue, yeah, I'm good, but I have a question before I commit." He said, "Do you have 100% giving on your board?" And like I couldn't say yes and I couldn't say no, right? And I was really between a rock and a hard place. And he just looked at me and smiled and he said, I know. He said, I would have given you X number of dollars if you had 100%, but I'm only going to give you, 50% because you don't.
Yeah.
I thought it's fair. So that's a story that I share because, and it doesn't matter whether the board member is giving you $20 or $20,000. At least as a fundraiser, I can go out and say, we have 100% giving, financial giving.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome story. And thanks for sharing just the, how you navigate that with your executive and with the board, and with experience comes perhaps boldness in terms of your approach. So that's awesome. Sue, we have worked together now for more than a year. I guess it's probably closer to a year and a half now, and I want to transition our conversation towards what is happening within your organization from a technology point of view. And I remember, if not the first conversation, very, very, one of the very early conversations that you and I had, and you had communicated to me this vision of I guess, a better life when it came to technology within the organization. And so it's amazing you're in this situation, and we have other clients who are in the similar situation who had made the decision to transform their organizations before COVID, and we're already on that journey. And then we have, some perhaps who are on this conversation today who are just starting that. And so COVID aside, I would really like to hear from you in terms of what was prompting the need to make a change, and what was going on in the organization, and what were those things that really were the catalyst for making a change in the direction of replacing your legacy technology with, in this case, Salesforce?
It was a moment in time. I came in and looked at the CRM that we had, and it was clunky, it was antiquated, and it was just, honestly, it was a waste of time. I mean, I am dependent on a CRM, and trust me, I spent a year looking at a whole bunch of different CRMs before landing on Salesforce. I was looking for a system that would make my life easier, bottom line, right? So I could generate reports, all and capture donor information for the simple reason of getting to know the donor better and being able to create a stronger relationship between the donor and our organization. And so and I couldn't do that with the system that we had. It was very transactional based. The donation came in and that was it. But there was no ability to really look behind the why in terms of what had happened. So we decided on Salesforce, and one of the components of Salesforce that we're newly entered into, we got into Pardo, right? The marketing communications component of it. So we're now able to communicate. We have a database of about 27,000. We are now able to communicate to those people in a very efficient, effective way. So Salesforce has allowed us to increase efficiency and effectiveness. We know who we're talking to. We know how and why they are responding to us from a donation standpoint and for increased information and awareness and access to our programs. And it was the best decision we ever made. The service that Belmar has provided has been excellent, and when we got Salesforce and we were looking at a couple of different implementation partners, we spent a lot of time, you and I, chatting. And what I've really, really appreciated and was crucial for us in determining how this was all going to happen was I wanted a project team I wanted a senior project team, and I wanted 24-hour access, basically, because when we've worked with different organizations before. You get the senior team in at the beginning, and then as time goes on, people come in and come out, and that's what that's what you guys have been able to do, right? So we had the same team right from the go-get to now, and it's been so. You've become an extension, right? A technology extension of not just our, the fundraising department, but from CMHA VF in its entirety. So.
Well, that's awesome, and I mean, thank you for those comments, and certainly it's a partnership that we have. So my question I had asked, I'm going to ask it a slightly different way, but the response you gave was the tools you had just were not adequate to address the job that needed to be done, and we certainly have conversations with prospective customers where they're looking at a new set of tools and perhaps expecting the tools themselves to transform them and to make a significant change. And I suppose if you're coming off of really clunky tools, moving to Salesforce on its own is going to move you forward. But it's behind the tools, what's going on within the organization, what's happening with your team, what that onboarding process has looked like. And so I'd love to get your insight in terms of how did you work with your team once the system went live, once you were, you could log into Salesforce, and what are some of the things that you did with your team to ensure that they were supported and that they could really do their job, and just some lessons learned from that process.
It's it's like going to a conference and you're all stoked, and and it's been an awesome experience, and you walk away and the enthusiasm wears off about three days later. Then you forgot what you were actually listening to or exposed to during that period. We've ensured that the leadership team, there's 6 of us representing the different components of the departments within the organization. 4 out of the 6 are all users of the system, not all nearly to the same level that I am. And from a hierarchical structural standpoint, and within the different departments, there's 2 or 3 individuals who are using the system as well. And so we attempt to do quarterly training sessions with them. We've developed our own internal manual that's a living manual, which has been really helpful because, trust me, I'm not a technological person at all. And what we found, we only learn through the using of the system, right? And then we learn together, right? Because my needs as a fundraiser are different from the finance department's needs, who are different from the marketing communications needs. So it's when we come together and we it's the conversation and it's education, right? So it's ongoing,
right?
And then identifying where the gaps are, right? Geez, I was thinking we could do this. Well, you know what? Maybe we're just thinking about it differently, and we can do that. Because one of the things that I found absolutely critical is the reporting, and there's a gazillion different reports, and we're starting to tailor them now, because from those reports, I can make decisions in terms of donor relations. It comes back to donor relations, John Smith has been giving, X number of dollars over X number of years. There's been some gaps, etc. But it gives me a little bit of a history. Then I could see he's responding to certain types of communication. It makes it easier when I'm either sending him an email or having a phone conversation. I have a little bit more knowledge, and I feel a little bit more intelligent when I'm talking to him, as opposed to just saying thank you, which is absolutely critical. But it gives me some structure to be able to have a conversation with the donor, and the donor feels like I actually know what I'm talking about. So that helps too.
Yeah, for sure. And that was actually my next question, just in terms of the donor experience. And for those who may not be familiar with all of the different aspects of Salesforce, there's how your organization is using Salesforce today is really for your internal staff.
Yes.
And there is the ability to have your constituents connect to Salesforce, and that's something that, you know, maybe a future state for CMHA. But you know, a donor feeling valued, a donor feeling like they're being heard, and really this journey that we've talked about with, you know, donors are on this journey. What are some insights that you've been able to gain, just, you know, now that you've been using Salesforce for the better part of the year? What are some of these donor experiences that you're having?
I had a great experience actually just last week. I had seen there was one day there were 3 monthly donors that came in, and I'm thinking there were 5 actually. And for us, that we get 5 a year, like it was a lot. And so I was able to go back and find out what communication, you know, had reached these different people. And as I looked at one of the files of a gentleman, he had been giving since 2017 sporadically. He had been, he had given during Ride Don't Hide. He had supported somebody riding, and then just dribs and drabs, you know, it was all great. And then there was a monthly gift. And I thought, oh my gosh. So, you know, it was over a 3-year period. So I called him and said, thank you. And that was great. Then I emailed him and I said, if you got time for a longer conversation, I'm really curious in terms of why, you know, why you're now giving monthly. And the long and the short of it is he lost his wife 3 years ago, tragically, to a mental illness. And he was trying to do the best he could to support us. And he received a communication piece from us about monthly giving. He started to give monthly. He felt so much, he felt wonderful being able to support us on a monthly basis, knowing it was for him the right thing to do. Anyway, it was just a wonderful conversation. And he was extremely appreciative of the fact that I simply had picked up the phone. And I think it's because he lost his wife. He's lonely, and he's in his 80s, and there's a connection, right? The human connection. And so that's been a very cool, very, very cool experience.
Yeah, well, that's a really nice and special story in terms of that donor relationship and why. And I guess what I'm hearing in part is because of the tools you have today, you're now able to really be able to get that insight in terms of you know, what is that relationship, in this case a financial relationship between the donor and your organization, and then from that be able to just have a conversation about their story and their journey. So
because for me it's about the why, it's not about the what. You know, it's about why. You've got a choice here in BC. The average donor gives to 6, or was giving to 6 different nonprofits, right? So I always feel very blessed when they select us as one of their causes, and it's the why. There's always a story behind it, right? There's always a story, and the more we understand the why, the greater, more meaningful the relationship is.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Sue, just in terms of just looking at the clock here, we're going to, we're just over halfway through our time together, and we have a few other things to cover. I would love to hear from you in terms of just any insight that you can share in terms of what an organization should do to prepare for evaluating a tool like Salesforce. And this is more so on the things that are going on within the organization. You've described, you know, what was happening within your organization before you started on this journey, and then you communicated that it was about a year that you were evaluating different options. But I'd love for you to expand upon that in terms of, now that you're on this side of the journey, what recommendations or advice can you give to those who are, you know, where you were 2 years ago?
First and foremost, again, it's the why. Why did I feel we needed new technology, different technology for the role I was playing in. And then the greater question is, does the organization support, believe, understand the need for technology, because that's a big one right off the bat. And so our executive and board were fully, walking down the path in terms of enhancing, increasing technology within the organization when I started, right? Our finance director is very technologically oriented, so he had been transitioning a number of the financial systems and software platforms that we were using. And we're always looking to see what syncs in with others to make it as efficient as possible. And so when I was looking at a new software platform, I already had the buy-in theoretically from the executive, right? From our CEO and the director of finance. So that was really good. And then really being able to, I had to do my like, it wasn't easy. I had to do a dog and pony show and do the business plan and show the ROI that I anticipated coming out of Salesforce. Like if we, go in and we're investing these funds, then what's the ROI going to look like? What is our donor base going to look like? What are our relationships with our donors going to look like? What's our communications going to look like? Because there is, it just doesn't happen overnight, and there is an investment. There's the one thing that I would do differently, Scott, is look at a full training package. We didn't do it, you and I worked together, and it was sort of ad hoc as we determined what our training needs were. I mean, there was certainly right off the bat, there was the training, but then after that, for me and for my peers, we're very much hands-on. You don't know what training you need until you figure out you can't do something, right? Or you're looking for that information. So I would have looked at having a full package of training. And one of the key ones is reporting. Like really understand what type of reports you want. What's the information? Why do you need those reports? What reports is your boss looking for, and what reports is the board looking for? And look at that right at the very beginning as part of the homework before the implementation process.
Well, that's great insight, and certainly on the latter part of that response in terms of what does, after you go live with a new system, what mechanisms are in place to support not only yourself, the executive, but of course the users that are your end users, the ones that are interacting with the system day to day. And certainly we have worked together post go live to continue to provide you with some of that training and support. But that's great insight. And there's one of the challenges that many customers face when evaluating a new set of technology, if this isn't something that they've done recently, or in some cases they've never done, understanding those questions, the things that they should be thinking about in terms of preparing to make this decision are so thank you for your insight there.
Well, sorry, Scott, and just one other component that is critical is the whole tax receipting component, and having your web page fully laid out and understanding what you need on that donation page and why you need it. And I didn't do my homework on that, to be honest with you, which is why we're going through that. And we're working on a new donation page so that we can capture the in memory, the tributes, organizations versus individuals, etc. And I hadn't done my homework on that. So that's another component that I would highly recommend that you look at. Right.
Yeah, well, that's good insight. And I think, Sue, for many customers, they're addressing some immediate needs, often in terms of moving to Salesforce. They're they have pain within their organization that they're looking to solve. And, I think what has, at least from our perspective, Salesforce certainly does provide customers with that ability to take that first step and then, over time, take further steps as the needs change or as, resources become available to address these other initiatives that they've identified and things that they're wanting to accomplish. So that's wonderful insight. So thank you for that. And I wanted to transition here to some questions. So again, as a reminder, if anybody does have any questions, please post them in the chat, and we'll give them, or I'll review them and present them to Sue as we get them. But Sue, there is one question here that has come up, and that is, what has been the impact of your enhanced communication with donors? So, how are you communicating with donors today, and the tool that you're using is Pardot, and how has that changed from what you had in the past?
I would say, a lot more sophisticated in our messaging, because we can see with the communications that we've sent out what's connecting with our donors, right? We'll see an influx of donations come in, or we'll see an influx of registration for programs that will come in. And so we're able to go back and look at what our messaging is, what the impact is, and what the gaps are on that. So it's really, so Salesforce and Pardot has really helped us in really understanding what messages are needed. It's not the messages are needed, what our donors are looking for.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's great. Next question here is, how do you drive your supporters to continue to give or volunteer within the organization?
Thank you for the volunteer side of it. We have our volunteer coordinators, phenomenal, very, very customer service oriented. And so we have a quarterly newsletter that goes out. It's called Volunteer Voices. We always profile a volunteer. We talk about trends in volunteerism. We look at opportunities in volunteerism and the impact that the individual has within the community at large and within our organization. We started during COVID volunteer recognition events, and they're an hour, they're on Zoom. We always offer an incentive. Gotta love the incentives, right? And fortunately, we have a bit of a budget. So we offer $20 for every volunteer who comes in and stays. And within that hour, we always have an expert in volunteerism, somebody from outside the organization reflecting on trends, etc. We always have a volunteer speaking about their experience. And we always have an educational component in terms of, like, we have an event coming up next week where we're providing, I think 20 minutes, half an hour, let's get real about mental health. So it's an in-house education program that we're providing for free, obviously, to our volunteers. So it's really embracing them and creating a community within the volunteers. And we found, in terms of trends, my gosh, we had over 200 volunteers because of events, and now that's totally changed. And our core 40 volunteers now are all online. They're co-hosts, Zoom co-hosts, right? And they're absolutely fabulous. And for the most part, they're university and college students. And yeah. Awesome.
Last question, and this is one that has come in from Ahmed, is around, the question reads, have you tried Hubspot, which is not a Salesforce tool, but have you tried Hubspot? And more importantly, what made you decide to go with Salesforce over competitors? So during your evaluation process, did you try other tools, and ultimately what
What drove me to
What
Salesforce?
drove you to Salesforce?
Okay, so here's my techno side of me. I have no idea what HubSpot is, so we can start there.
Yeah.
I had looked at probably half a dozen other CRMs for fundraising and software platforms that I had used in the past. And I happened to be in Toronto at a conference, and Salesforce is based in Toronto. And I had reached out to them, and they had been very good from a sales standpoint, getting back to me. And so I met with Nikki, I don't know, 2 or 3 times while I was there. I really needed to understand how it was going to help in terms of donor relationships. I wanted something that was more than just transactional. And so what the conversations led me down this path about really understanding the donor, the why behind the donor giving. And so through that, I said, oh, okay, that's all great. So now we've got the software, but that doesn't help me in terms of I need an implementation partner. And so the selection of Belmar, because we looked, and you know this, Scott, we looked at a couple of different organizations, and it was absolutely critical. Once we got the software platform, I knew, yeah, we could do it, but I'm going to go 80-20. 80% is the implementation partner.
Right. Well, again, thank you, Sue, for that feedback. And I think just for
sorry, I have one other thing. It was critical that it was a Canadian organization, right? It was critical. Well, Salesforce is American, but they had Canadian operations up here, and I wanted an implementation partner based here in BC.
Sure. So working with somebody that was in your
Local
community, and so I think just to maybe tie a bow on that in terms of the Salesforce as a platform, really provides more than just addressing donors or marketing automation or volunteers. You can go out and buy systems to address each of these use cases. Really, Salesforce brings it all together in a single platform, and that we certainly are seeing with other clients. That is really their key driver for going with Salesforce over other options available in the market.
So the one area that I didn't talk about that's really important, one of the revenue streams is fee for service. We have educational workshops that we deliver, and we have another education program that we deliver to the firefighters across the country, right? And so we look at the Salesforce for registrations, for purchasing of manuals, etc. So we're in the process of integrating all that, but we do use Salesforce for those purposes as well. And then the other component is that they link to other third-party platforms like Canada Helps, and that is hugely valuable for us as well. Right,
yeah, and I guess just to echo what you've just said, Sue, you started in your organization with addressing a fundraising use case, addressing the management of donors and the relationships that with donors, and once it was understood within the organization what Salesforce was capable of, it has begun to propagate into other areas within the organization, and that's exciting, because that really just is a validation of Salesforce as a platform and being much more flexible than just a purpose-built system that's really designed to address a single use case. So
and exactly in terms of the why behind it. So we have a fee-for-service department over there, and they're dealing with all these organizations here in Vancouver Fraser region. And at the same time, I'm dealing with a number of organizations in Vancouver Fraser. We need to talk to each other, and so that we understand, the corporation's needs. And this helps us. Salesforce provides us with that holistic picture of the organization that we're working with.
Awesome. Well, Sue, thank you for your feedback here today. Thank you for your insight into how your team at Canadian Mental Health are using Salesforce. So from myself and from those on our team who have worked on your projects, we're grateful and very appreciative of your commitment to us. And it's been a really fun journey over the last.
Not over yet.
Well, it's there's still lots to do and lots of exciting things happening within the organization. But we've had a lot of fun working together thus far, and we are doing our best to keep this webinar right on time and get people wrapped up at the top of the hour. And so with that, Sue, I just want to again extend a huge thank you for
my pleasure. Thank you
for sharing your insight with us today. And for those who have joined us, thank you so much for joining us. We are grateful that you've carved an hour out of your day to spend with us. And we do have a couple of participants who have been selected for the raffle. And so first, we have, I'm just getting a message here from our team. So Shannon, who's joined us, and Shannon, Berniers, I think is how you pronounce your last name. So Shannon, congrats on being one of our raffle winners. And Ahmed, you are the other raffle winner. So you posted a question. Thanks for posting a question. And our team will follow up with you through email and get your contact information. And we've got a gift that we want to send to you. So thank you so much for doing that. And as we had introduced off the top, we have recorded this session. So if you do want to share this with colleagues, by all means, you can do that. We're going to post it to our YouTube channel, and there is a link to the YouTube channel in the chat. So feel free to capture that now. And we just want to say thank you again, Sue, for your time today. And if anybody does want to reach out and learn more in terms of what Sue and the CMHA team have achieved, certainly reach out to myself or somebody on our team, and we will put you in contact with Sue. So with that, Sue.
Thank you very much. It was an honor.
Thank you so much. And we will talk soon. So thanks everybody for joining.